My fellow FIers, welcome back to another episode of Retirement Police Most Wanted. Today we are talking about a topic near and dear to my heart, and that is my financially clueless father's most important psychology of money lessons. And he was not someone who was an incredibly savvy financial person, but you're going to learn about the money tricks that he helped HouFIni learn over the years to make myself financially independent. My fellow FIers, welcome back to another great episode of Retirement Police Most Wanted. You know, I just want to give a shout out to the Boston Marathon and all of those individuals that participated in the Boston Marathon this year, and the city of Boston is just incredibly welcoming to that community. If you have ever trained and run for a marathon, you know that it is a long journey. You know that part of the journey is the training itself. And it takes a long time, and you plod through and you map things out, and eventually you get there. And consistency in your training, in your efforts, is really part of it. And that's a little bit like our achieving financial independence journey. We here at Retirement Police Most Wanted are on a 100-month journey to achieve financial independence. By the time this episode airs, we will be 96 months away from our journey to hitting our FI number, and we have a two-part financial independence number. And if you want to learn more about that, go back to episodes 3 and 4 to kind of find out where we are in terms of all of that. Today, a really exciting topic, as I said, near and dear to my heart. It's about my financially clueless father's most important psychology of money lessons. How is it that the man least interested in finances taught me some of the psychology of money lessons that are most important? Was he a subscriber to the Wall Street Journal? He definitely was not. Did this man pore over personal finance books, stock quotes, prospectuses? He definitely did not. Was he one of the wealthiest men in America? My father is not Elon Musk or Warren Buffett or any of those individuals. Definitely not. The answer is this man that did not do any of these things. This man was my father. And my father's superpower was being a psychology expert. And this extended to money in a very powerful but unintentional way. And these lessons will allow us to energize the retirement police. Now, again, we're 96 months away in this 100-month or less journey. And when I refer to the retirement police, you may be asking yourself, who exactly are you talking about, HouFIni? We are talking about the internet retirement police. So in the FIRE movement, the legends of the FIRE movement, people like Mr. Money Mustache, the Mad Scientist, Mr. 1500, and others, Mrs. 1500, otherwise known as Mindy Jensen, they talk about the internet retirement police, and we prefer to just call them the retirement police. The retirement police are individuals that believe you are not retired unless you do not work at all during your retirement. Now, we're seeking to make paid work optional by age 59 and a half. We are planning on tapping our pre-tax and post-tax retirement accounts to do this. Now, my father's psychology of money strategies included things like set it and forget it investing. In fact, my father never earned over $65,000 annually, yet he retired a millionaire. How is this possible? My dad did not focus on money. He emphasized counting his blessings. As I've previously discussed on this show, both my parents were children of the Great Depression. And in terms of money psychology, the Great Depression left an indelible mark on both my parents. I mean, let me be clear. I never heard my mother or my father speak of financial independence. It wasn't a term that they used, but it was certainly a thing that they instilled in me. Personally, I imagine people emerging from the Great Depression came out of this incredibly difficult experience one of two ways. One, they had a strong desire to be rich beyond their wildest imagination so that they never felt poor again. Think of all the material things that you would want to acquire around you. Or two, feeling so blessed that you were able to survive on so little that you never wanted much but the basic life necessities. Now, if there really are two categories, my father and definitely my mother, perhaps ironically, were in category 2. My father and mother focused on counting their blessings, and it wasn't just because they grew up in faith-rich families. My mother was certainly more faith-based than my father, but it's not polite to talk religion or politics or even money. But here, we definitely talk about the money. The psychology of money is finding a spouse who is good with money. My father did not pursue a life of material possessions, and you would know this if you listened to previous episodes of the show. And if you haven't, I encourage you to go back because there's some other nuggets in there. He also didn't pursue being quote-unquote rich because he grew up without money. My parents, my father, my mother would say, we didn't know we were poor because everybody I knew was poor in terms of growing up during the Great Depression. As a result, post the Great Depression, my father's psychology of money always reflected his belief that he was blessed by a roof over his head, food on the table, clothes on his back, and a little extra money for a rainy day. We now would call that an emergency fund. Back then, they called it a rainy day fund. Literally, I know those things sound cliche, but in my father's case, it really was true. My father literally had no interest in the stock market, his bank account, and most days barely knew how much cash was in his wallet because he spent very little money. On the other hand, my mother was keenly aware of how much cash my parents had on hand and in their checking and savings accounts. My mother was a born saver. She was debt averse. Those are two qualities that I most definitely inherited from her. She was working as a bank teller while my father pursued his PhD. My mother handled my parents' finances throughout their marriage. Despite an extremely debilitating physical illness for nearly 2 decades, my mother's mind was sharp. sharp as a tack, as they say. My mother led the family financial decisions even until her last days. So how is it that my father provided me the most important psychology of money, financial related lessons? It was mainly due to my father's financial temperament, which I'm going to explain further here. My father showed me that it was best to be emotionally detached from financial decisions. The ups and downs of investing, savings, and unexpected events impacting the financial aspects of their lives did not noticeably elicit emotion from my father. My father did not spend emotional energy on, say, Black Monday 1987 stock market crash or market corrections. Again, history repeats itself, and we are seeing ups and downs in the market here in real time. But this emotional detachment from financial decisions was a core financial strength for my father. My father did not attempt to time the market. He was a brilliant man, really, a brilliant man in so many ways. He probably didn't even know what market timing was. He just kept plugging away at his own work and trusted that it would all work out in the end. He saved himself a lot of emotional distress in doing this. And again, I think it goes back to living through the Great Depression and living on so little, and knowing that even during the worst economic period of that century, that he felt that he was living a rich life. He didn't know any better. My father knew that my parents were living below their means during their marriage. And while they did not knowingly, at least not based on my financial discussions with my parents, undertake an exercise like saving 25 times their income, again, at the very height of my father's earning power, he never made more than $65,000 annually. So, on paper, there's no way that they should have done as well as they did to have their financial freedom. But they had more than enough when he finally retired, given factors I'm going to tell you now. And I would encourage you to go back to previous episodes of Retirement Police Most Wanted. I cannot state this with certainty, but based on the fact that my parents eventually maxed out my father's 403B plan and accumulated wealth, and I say wealth in quotes here, via other safe financial vehicles such as certificates of deposit and money market accounts, I do believe they did attain 25 times their annual spending. Again, this was not a concept that they specifically mentioned, even though they didn't know about things like the 4% rule. I do believe they did attain 25 times their annual spending. Again, my father earned at the height $65,000 a year. They definitely did not live on that. So I think they were able to attain 25 times their annual spending and basically lived on a 4% rule or less The caveat here being that in the last few years of life, in which my father required assisted living, his annual spending far exceeded his annual spending in previous decades. But it all worked out in the end. One of the main psychology of money tools that my father and mother used to achieve financial freedom was a set it and forget it strategy for retirement. My father may have been oblivious to stock market fluctuations, but my father definitely knew he had to save for retirement. My grandfather had an excellent pension with a strong and stable company, and I talked about my grandfather in previous episodes and his pathway to retirement, or not so much retirement. So go back and listen to those episodes. By the time my father began his career, the employer investment option he was able to access was part of pre-tax retirement accounts or tax-deferred accounts. In my father's case, this was a 403B plan, the nonprofit equivalent of a 401k plan. Generally speaking, these have the same limits as a 401k plan. They have the same tax advantages as a 401k plan. They're just the counterpart if you work for a nonprofit entity. So as part of this set it and forget it strategy, he was an oblivious or forgetful investor. My father did not eagerly anticipate the quarterly 403B statements. In fact, he rarely opened them. But my mother did. Certainly, one should have a more active interest in any investment adjustments that should be made. But my point is that even as an oblivious investor, his commitment to a diversified portfolio over decades yielded more wealth than he was able to spend in his lifetime. And really, largely what he invested in terms of these diversified funds, is what we would now call index funds. And even if they were aggressive, they might have been like target date type funds where gradually over time they also added a more balanced portfolio. I never heard my father express a desire to be a millionaire or discuss his investment goals. In fact, it's unlikely he thought about it. How is it possible that such a passive investor could be so successful? My father and mother would be classified as successful, forgetful investors. According to a study by Fidelity Investments, individual clients who were dead or forgot that they had an account at Fidelity did better than those who knew and were active with their accounts. Just Google Fidelity Investments, clients who were dead or forgot they had an account doing better than active account holders. Ironically, this is probably a major contributing factor in my parents' accumulation of more wealth creation via the stock market than was expected, because they never tried to beat the market and instead passively followed a set it and forget it strategy. Further, as the millionaire next door would say, be a prodigious accumulator of wealth, or PAW. Now, if you have not read Thomas J. Stanley and William Danko's The Millionaire Next Door, and this book is now multiple decades old, but the philosophy behind it is still spot on. And the concept of paying yourself first, which my parents used religiously, was created long before books like The Millionaire Next Door and others were created. My parents were PAWs. My parents were eventually the millionaires next door. You would have had no idea that that was the case, because you would have seen a guy working on his yard in jeans that were so old and t-shirts that ended up being so faded or had holes in them, you would have never known. But he was the millionaire next door. The biggest way my parents did this was by paying themselves first each month. Money for retirement came out of my father's paycheck even before it was taxed, right? He put it in those pre-tax 403B accounts. My parents never even saw the money they were putting into the pre-tax retirement account. It was like the money didn't even exist in my father's head. Again, a brilliant man, but completely clueless about that, except for the fact that he needed to pay himself first. He needed to have that rainy day fund, and in that sense, it was way bigger than just an emergency fund. Budgeted items included my parents' mortgage, car payments, any regular monthly expenses. With limited dollars, my parents' quote-unquote entertainment expenses only happened if there was enough money. However, my parents did have certain non-negotiable entertainment expenses built into their budget. They were passionate about college basketball, so season tickets for that were a must. They were passionate about the local symphony orchestra, and so they made sure that they purchased reasonable, discounted prices. Often there was a special for season tickets for that as well. So it wasn't like they didn't have any fun and denied themselves pleasures. They just zeroed in on what truly their pleasures were. They had certain annual rituals. Any New Year's Eve, there was going to be a multi-course lobster dinner, and they were going to ring in the new year. They didn't like to go out for that, because they considered that New Year's Eve was an amateur night, but they definitely celebrated in style and very much enjoyed that. So I can point to a number of things that they would do where they would do their targeted splurges, I would say. And if you follow your money or your life, you know kind of what those things are. From day one, my father invested at least the minimum amount of funds required to receive the company match. The company retirement match is an incredible bonus that is not always offered by corporations and nonprofit organizations. I know places have either taken those away or don't offer them at all or have curbed them. But I am telling you, if your company still offers a matching contribution to your retirement account, find a way to take advantage of it. I've had people tell me that they can, quote, cannot afford the company match, unquote. I hear this all the time. I hear this from people that I work with. I hear this from people getting straight out of school. Unfortunately, this is leaving money on the table. So try this. Try investing 1% of your income for a month. Then the next month, increase this percentage by 1%. Keep increasing your investment by 1% each month until you hit the company match. You may not feel this loss of income as much as you think that you will. I always tell people graduating from college, make sure you do this company match. They'll say, I can't, I got all this stuff. I'm willing to bet that if you just do it, you're probably going to figure out a way to do without the funds that you were using to put towards your company match. It's like free money. Your employer has definitely factored in the company match as part of your compensation package. If you are not taking advantage of the company match, you're actually saving your company money. They're not going to give that to you in a raise instead. They're banking it as part of your total compensation package. So take advantage of the company match. It's definitely something my parents did, and again, it boosted their annual rate of return because it was a built-in annual rate of return. And then hopefully they had a rate of return on top of that. And historically speaking, in terms of the stock market, even though the future cannot be guaranteed this way, over the course of the stock market, it has gone up. Another thing, instead of spending any raise, my parents invested my father's annual raise back into the 403b plan. I'm honestly not sure how my parents handled inflationary increases. I do think, as I said, they went without little treats here and there, but then they really dialed in on their treats. But they did do what they needed to do to keep investing that into the maximum level of the 403b. It took them time to get there. Again, they hit the company match and then they kept working towards the point where they could do the entire IRS limits. You know, Your Money or Your Life co-author Joe Dominguez once stated, quote, there is the possibility that consciousness grows faster than inflation. And we've been in a period, unquote, we've been in a period here where we have experienced high levels of inflation. And the people that have been able to manage the inflation using that consciousness, thinking about, okay, do I really need this? Do I really not need this? Joe asserted that when you are cognizant of your expenses, even with high inflation, you can live on even less because it's not worth spending the life energy. And that's another book. If you haven't gone and read Your Money or Your Life by Joe Dominguez and Vicki Robin, I would encourage you to read that book, you have to do the steps. You can't just know it. You gotta do the steps. In terms of, the rates when they wrote that book, in terms of investing in things like money markets and bonds, those levels kind of don't work out. Again, most people now would recommend the index funds. And again, this is not advice. I have a full disclaimer here. This is not investment advice. This is entertainment only. Just telling you things that we have done. So, but having that consciousness about your spending does wonders for your spending. Waiting on purchasing things to determine whether or not you really need them, that is another great tactic. Another thing that my parents instilled, as my parents paid off their debts, in particular, I'm thinking about things like their mortgage, they increased investment in my father's 403B plan until it reached that legal maximum. Or anytime they had, if they paid off a car, they would, do more. So in doing so, my parents did not express that they felt deprivation while investing for the long term. Again, that may have been part of their Great Depression, but they really focused on their blessings. And once they hit the maximum, they focused on other savings vehicles. So after maxing out a 403B retirement account, my parents began to deploy their quote-unquote excess discretionary dollars into other investments. They did utilize low-risk certificates of deposit and money market accounts. At the time, these were earning 5% or more. Our achieving financial independence, we believe we will hit our financial independence number. In fact, we have a 2-part financial independence number. I go into great detail on this in episode 3 and episode 4. This is where the personal and personal finance comes in. For us, our part 1 financial independence number goes from age 59 and a half to age 65. This is largely in cash-like accounts. There are some, certainly, investments in stocks and other things. And then we have our second part of our financial independence number that's going to be for age 65 and beyond. And those pretty much are all invested in the stock market in diversified portfolios. This is what we're planning on doing. This is what we feel comfortable with, at least at this point. That plan may change sometime in the future, but we want to hear from fellow FIers who have either achieved financial freedom and are living their best life, or are on the pathway to becoming debt-free and then moving towards financial independence. That is something we had to do early on in our 20s, after at least my spouse took on college debt. I was fortunate enough to have and earn a debt-free degree. Hopefully that's the case for you as well. But then we had to throw as much money as we could to that, and then save for a down payment for a house. And then our plan was to throw money at our mortgage. So we are currently in a state that we are debt-free. We are working on our 2 FI numbers and doing that at the same time. Again, go back to episodes 3 and 4. But I really thought it was important to share with you how somebody who was completely financially clueless, my father, his psychology of money strategies really impacted and helped us on our journey. So, as part of the disclaimer, the content of this show, this video, this podcast, any of our website or blog posts are not intended to be investment or life advice. Viewers, listeners, readers should consult with their legal, financial, and accounting specialists. Hey, let's throw in your spiritual and or life coaches to provide insight on your personal and specific circumstances, as each situation is unique. So all of our content is for entertainment purposes only. We hope that you will hit subscribe and continue to be with us on Retirement Police Most Wanted as we seek to break our golden handcuffs and go on the lam from the retirement police. So, FIers, be well, and we'll see you, or we will let you listen to our voices on the next show. Thank you very much, and take care.